welcome action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action, All the Time. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Murphy, and in this special Season 2 bonus episode of the podcast, we are looking at 1998's Ronin. Why Ronin, you say? Well, just like last season, we picked the bonus episodes because they have some connection to the main season and are also films we would not cover in one of our main seasons. The connection in this one being that the star of this film, Robert De Niro, starred alongside Stallone together in last week's film, Copland. Anyway, now that's explained, let me introduce my co-host, who as always is 1/3 of the Bloodhound Picks podcast, screenwriter, and a man who knows a thing or two about a good MacGuffin. It's Mr. Craig Draheim.
Thank you for having me, and I think after this season, if you don't mind, I'm going to pass out now.
It's one of the great lines from the film. We'll talk about that more, for sure. Now, before we get started, a little bit of background on the movie. Ronin, unusually for an action film, premiered at the Venice Film Festival on September 12th, 1998, before debuting in US cinemas on September 25th, 1998. It was directed by the legendary director John Frankenheimer, whose notable credits include the likes of The Birdman of Alcatraz, The Manchurian Candidate, Black Sunday, Seconds, a whole bunch of other stuff. Although he had been having something of a rough patch throughout, well, basically most of the 80s and 90s, and this was kind of a comeback film for him. The original screenplay was written by J.D. Zeek, who doesn't have very many credits on IMDb, but I did note that he wrote the direct-to-video Steven Seagal effort Pistol Whipped. So there's something for you. Also credited on the screenplay for doing some rewrites is playwright and screenwriter David Mamet, who you may know for the likes of Glengarry Glen Ross, The Untouchables, The Spanish Prisoner, etc., etc. Although he wrote it under a pseudonym, Richard Weiss, and that is because of basically a credit dispute. He felt that he should have been the top bill writer given the amount of revisions he did, but the studio, however, disagreed with him, so he wasn't happy about that, so stuck it under a pseudonym. Review-wise, it currently holds a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb. That's a new series record. 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 66 reviews. 67 on Metacritic, based on 23 reviews. And a 3.5 on Letterboxd. Box office-wise, it was made a rather modest $70.7 million off of a $55 million budget. However, it must be well into the black nowadays because it grew into kind of cult classic over the years. And I feel like it was a bigger hit on video than it was at the box office. That's certainly where I discovered it. I got it on VHS as a teen, but hadn't heard of it before. Just picked it up because, like, I really liked Robert De Niro. I was a big Robert De Niro fan and, watched a lot of his movies. And that's what attracted to me. And I knew that, like, John Reno was in it as well. And I'd already seen him in, like, Mission Impossible and Leon. So I was like, oh, all right, this looks cool. I'll pick this up. So what's your relationship to the film, Craig?
So I know right before we started recording was talking about, so I've seen it in chunks a ton because for some reason anytime there's any cable station will go through a Ronin phase. It feels like once a year, and but I'll see it in pieces. So throughout the years I've seen the whole movie many times in pieces, but I think because I can't remember, I think this may be the first time I actually watched it from beginning to end in one sitting. So
well, like I say, obviously because I picked it on video, I've watched it a few times. I watched it but I've not watched it in a long time because obviously kind of in my 20s I kind of sold off like my VHSs. So I've not caught it. I don't know. It's got to be at least a decade, if not like closer to 15 years. So it was kind of fun rewatching it. I like, and you said that it's kind of funny because it's kind of, you said that in the States it kind of pops up in streaming and then kind of disappears and then pops up again. And I watched it here on Netflix for this rewatch, and then at the end of the film it said that it will be going away from Netflix on May the 31st. So by the time this episode comes out, you will no longer be able to watch Ronin on Netflix in the UK.
Yeah, no, it's been this kind of weird whole ordeal, I guess, relationship I've had with Ronin where, and this has been a few years ongoing, where I noticed it, where I felt like really watching it, I searched for it, and it was just absolutely nowhere except, it'd be like on Showtime or whatever, or something I didn't have. And then, but you couldn't find it anywhere. And then for a year or so, you could find it everywhere. It was on Amazon. It was, Hulu, whatever. Anywhere you wanted to look, it was just there. And then for some reason, anytime I think, I want to go watch Ronin or finally get around to it, then it just leaves again. And same with this time, as I went to watch it, and it was just unavailable anywhere. So I ended up buying the Blu-ray.
Oh, well. Apparently the John Frankenheimer commentary is pretty good. So alright, so. You've got that. You can check that out if you've not already.
Yeah.
We also briefly discussed before we started recording this episode that the way the podcast works is that we go through the plot of the film. So this is your official spoiler warning, by the way, listeners. Official spoiler warning. We talk about the whole movie from beginning to end. All elements of the movie and the plot. We may skip over some scenes because they don't really add up too much in terms of the story, but whatever. We talk about the movie beginning to end. And in the case of this movie, and like in the case of probably other movies as well that we've covered, the plot is not the strongest element of this film. And I want to flag up to listeners. I genuinely think this is an excellent film. I really do. I think that Frankenheimer keeps the pace taut. His sense of tension is great. I think the cast are great. I presume a lot of the snappy one-liners come from Mamet. I think so. Yeah, I think the dialogue is crisp and really quotable. A lot of it. I love I think the cinematographer's name's Richard Frace. His deep focus cinematography, great. However, the plot is unnecessarily convoluted, as we will delve into
in a way that doesn't add up or come together at any point.
No. And yeah, there's other things as well. I mean, like in terms of the storytelling, some of the storytelling just doesn't add up to anything. Much like the central metaphor of the film that kind of doesn't really work, which we will discuss when that bit comes up. But I suppose this is one of the kind of longer efforts that we've covered, clocking in 2 hours and 2 minutes, although without credits, an hour and 56. So we should probably not do what we normally do and go off on massive tangents about other movies and how things fit into different genres or whatever tangent we are on. We'll just dive straight into this one. So we get a little title card with a little explanation, a little kind of dictionary definition of Ronin, and then we get the title Ronin blazed on the screen, and then we cut into our opening scene. So where are we at with our opening scene, Craig?
We are at a French cafe, it's in a French city, and we start with De Niro, who is called Sam, which you really never kind of learn his name, but
you do about
he
an
is
hour
on these steps, and he's kind of just observing. Yeah.
Yeah, you do learn his name about an hour into the film where he takes a phone call. Somebody comes out of a cafe and goes like, "Hey, is anybody called Sam?" And he's like, yeah. Anyway, continue.
But so he is kind of looking over this cafe area and watching the people come in and out. He sees a woman go in, and so after a while, he finally decides to go in, where he then puts a gun under some like little crates of water, or like bottles and things like that, right outside the door. And he goes inside. The shop owner kind of talks about, or we're almost closed. They said, "Can I have just a small drink? But I have to use the bathroom first." And then he unlocks the door to go outside just to make sure, goes into the bathroom, and then comes in and has a drink. And at that point, from what we're learning, all of the regular kind of civilians are leaving, so that, the people that are remaining are the ones that are going to be the ones that we are following, this kind of international group of career criminal specialists or whatever they may be.
They're ex-special service, ex kind of secret service people who are now mercenaries. Most of them, it seems to be. I think some of them are just mercenaries, but most of them are kind of ex-secret service or ex-military of some sort, with, I think, possible exception of Vincent in terms of the group that is assembled, not the people who hire the group, who are the IRA basically. So Sam's supposed to be ex-CIA. Stellan Skarsgård's character is ex-KGB. I think Spence who's played by Sean Bean, is supposed to be, well, he claims to be from the SAS, ex-SAS, but it turns out probably not so much. Maybe just ex-British military, probably got drummed out of the army or whatever. I'm not sure about Larry. He's maybe just a getaway driver. He's just maybe a career getaway driver. And the same with Vincent. I think he might just be like a shady operative who has a lot of criminal contacts. Stellan Skarsgård's character is, this is a confusing element in the film. Stellan Skarsgård's character is Gregor, or half the time he is, because all the naturally English-speaking characters refer to him in a very English way as Gregor, but then all of the Russian characters in the film call him Grigor. So I was like, I had to double check the credits. Like, how is it spelled? Is it Grigor? And everybody on the English side is pronouncing it wrong? Or Gergor? It turns out it is Gregor. So he is a Gregor, not a Grigor, but, he's a confusing character as well, because apparently he's East German. But he worked for the KGB, and he has a sometimes Eastern European accent, which would suggest he's not East German, but Russian, and a sometimes just Stellan Skarsgård's normal Swedish-speaking voice, which is, it's confusing.
Yeah, well, he's the one that I have to say with the accent. I think he's a great actor, but reading up on this movie, you hear with Jonathan Pryce, they're all, I can't think of her name right now, the actress that plays Deidre, and they're kind of talking about how they did all of this acting coaching of like learning the Northern Ireland accent and all this stuff, and then hearing Stellan Skarsgård, it's like, what is he supposed to be actually? Like, I'm reading what it says he is, like on the IMDb or in like these facts or, Wikipedia or whatever it is, but it's not that.
I don't know, because like, I'm sure somebody mentions that he's East German at some point, and then I was like, why is he ex-KGB then? Why didn't he work for the Stasi? I don't understand. And like sometimes he is not attempting an accent, sometimes he is attempting an accent. I would say that the actress who plays Deirdre is Natasha McKellen.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Macklon, I think it is. And yeah, her. I mean, yes, apparently she did a lot of work with the dialect coach, but it is a particularly ripe Northern Irish accent, which is as probably not the best representation of a Northern Irish accent that she does throughout the movie, kind of like this, which is not actually very much. I think this is about as good as an impersonation as she does, and that's, I mean, anybody from Northern Ireland listening, I'm not pretending that this is a good Northern Irish accent.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but kind of going back to this scene, I would say that the tension in this scene and like the John Frankenheimer, the director, really ramps up the tension in this scene, and you're kind of suspicious of all these characters, and there's this really kind of real paranoia feeling, and it really sets up the movie real well in terms of the kind of paranoia feeling of the whole movie.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And it kind of put Sam's character in this place. So he wants to figure out, who he's working for pretty much the whole time, but he's reluctant throughout. And I guess it's supposed to make it seem more realistic later on, or try and be a better, well, I guess it will be spoiled, but for what's about to happen and what he is actually trying to accomplish. But yeah, it's kind of this, he doesn't want to go in the truck. It shows that he's already kind of starting to butt heads with them, but he goes in the truck anyways because, and he won't even give the reason why. He says, well, you know why, which, they all assume is for the money, but we learn different later on.
And then we kind of get a scene like one of those classic, I feel like this was kind of common in the 90s, have one of those kind of classic scenes that are often they're often in like heist movies or kind of crime movies and stuff like this, where we kind of meet the gang and we have like some fun banter, and it's like much like the kind of assembling the group in like Reservoir Dogs or whatever, like we get a scene in a warehouse where like the plan is told to them, and we get some fun bickering, and we get some fun between Sean Bean's character Spence and De Niro's character Sam. There's a bit of a kind of like Brits versus Yanks kind of banter back and forth.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's a lot of fun, and you really can see the David Mamet scripting in a lot of these opening parts, because very little information is actually given. I mean, throughout with Sam's character, he gives very little information of who he actually is or why he's there or whatever. Or even from Deidre, it's basically on a what you need to know basis. I'm not going to reveal anymore. And that's kind of how it goes on throughout. But yeah, it's fun kind of seeing this, because they're all trying to almost get a read on him, and he'll give these little jokey quips that they're peppered with like actual knowledge to show that he knows what he's talking about. But then, he'll go in to say how like the interrogation, they ask, well, how'd they finally break you with interrogation? And he kind of says, oh, it's a grasshopper. And, he just talks about that they gave him an alcohol drink, or, there's little jokes like that. I think are a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, because like one character is like, oh my God, what's a grasshopper? And he's like, well, it's, 2 parts gin, 1 part creme de menthe, like just lists off the ingredients of a cocktail. And there's some real fun character moments here, and you kind of get this sense of Sam being this very experienced guy of like these sorts of situations, and the way he's kind of testing everybody out. It's kind of pushing people's buttons, and there's that great scene between him and Grigor, where he pushes the coffee cup over, and Gregor catches it, and then so that kind of signifies to the audience that, oh, well, he's been introduced as the tech guy, but obviously he was like field agent as well. He's not just the nerdy tech guy after all.
Yeah. And it even pops up later on where he talks about how he wants to like be out there in the field, or he wants to do something. Like, it seems like that's not really his place as the tech guy. He's just kind of there. Is it? Which, we learn more later on, but.
Yes.
Oh, and I think in Sean Bean, I think works really well in it, of kind of this cocky character where, he's obviously the younger one out of them that, thinks he knows it all, but he's obviously the most nervous. And then this is where we start to see, even though there is a romantic relationship, which we'll talk about shoehorned in, this is where we get to see the real kind of relationship start blooming between Sam and Vincent, because where Vincent, even though he's kind of this handler, or he's getting them all this stuff in France, he seems like he's he has a code just like Sam does.
Yes, and their bromance is way more convincing than the actual supposed romance that happens in the movie. Like, I am more convinced that Sam has love for Vincent than, we'll just say it, like, it ends up being the love story between him and Deirdre, which we can basically skim over, but we will talk about it in further detail as those scenes arrive. But after
those two scenes that are very clear.
Well, technically, the love story, like, I feel like the love story is 3 scenes. So we'll kind of talk about, we'll talk about those moments as they arrive. And, they're not full scenes. They're like part of scenes. Yes, we'll talk about each of those moments as they arrive. And then each of them are kind of like, oh, okay, that's a thing that's happening there. But we'll move on from the warehouse to the gun sale exchange. So they're basically, before they go on the mission, they've already got some guns, but they need more guns. So they go to a meeting point to get those guns. But, these things you can't just buy a gun in a movie, apparently. These things got to go sideways. So tell us exactly, Craig, how it goes sideways.
So it is Sam, Vincent, Spence and Larry, and they pretty much pull up, and it's this whole kind of next to the river exchange, which we've seen before, where the one car flashes their high beams and then turns them off, and they slowly go towards each other, and they get out of the car, and so do the other group. They're kind of checking the guns, and because Spence apparently is the weapons expert, he decides that he's going to be running it, and really nobody else is going to argue with him. Just let him do it. But you can tell that he's nervous and he's shaking, and he goes up there and the guy basically opens the trunk. He's looking over all the weapons, but all the weapons aren't there. So then it's part of the deal is some of the weapons will be here, but until we get the money, then the rest are going to be in this other car with my boss, who's like waiting the money, and in this tunnel, and so, obviously Sam knows better, and that is just a cause for an ambush, because apparently, as we talked about before recording, that's just what gun runners do. They just ambush their potential clients instead of collecting the money. And then, Sam, he kind of warns Vincent and tries to help him. And then he does end up seeing, because a boat goes by, a sniper. And then a big shootout erupts. And, fortunately, the French bad guys are killed and the good guys, yes, our main characters all make it out. But
the main
It's
protagonist.
this whole kind of gunfight and the useless, and the useless French police officers show up too late, which is a thing I wrote in my notes actually, is that like French officers in this movie are just never there on time, or they're like, pose no threat at all.
That's absolutely, it's weird because like this movie is so tense in terms of like the kind of paranoia of like people being double crossed and, you know, this kind of back and forth between these various terrorist groups who are after this case, the central MacGuffin in the film. But yeah, there's never any sense of threat from the police at all. And that, you know, you never even for a second think that they're going to be caught by the police because, like you say, they either don't turn up or they turn up right in the last second, and you're like, where have you been all this time? And obviously the characters act as if there's no threat from the police at all, because they do not like, it's not like Mission Impossible. There's no latex masks, kind of disguises or anything. There's none of that. They don't hide their identities. They just like wander around these cities, like whether they're in Paris or Nice or the town of Arles, the three central locations of this film. They just wander about as if they're tourists. Like there's no, they don't try and hide themselves at all, despite all the apparent spycraft that is being shown in other parts of the movie. There's no spycraft going on in terms of like hiding their location.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I will get into it more throughout, but one of the title instead of Ronin, because, you know, there is a little bit of issue of having Ronin as the title, which we'll get into, but I put down as the joke of just calling it Innocent Bystander, because this whole movie has so many scenes where you just watch the random people on the street are the ones being shot, and the people that are supposed to be, I guess, killed aren't, or, you just see so many kind of innocent people being shot or cars blow up, and
and to be fair,
of it. And
that's almost one of the more realistic elements of the movie, of like, so you never get a sense, like with a lot of action movies, you never get like a sense of like real world impact of just like the characters who exist within the movie are the ones who get kind of hurt or whatever. And if a bystander is an innocent bystander, they will of course escape unscathed. A bit like the kind of thing in Bond movies where if, like a police car could get run over by a truck and then you would get a shot of the two police officers getting out of that police car and brushing themselves off, being like, oh, well, that was a scrape, wasn't it? Or, like, cause innocent people don't die in a lot of these films. This film has a particularly brutal attitude, to innocent bystanders of just like, there's people dying left, right and center. Although, again, kind of conversely to that of kind of being like, oh, well, that kind of shows a more real world impact to this film. But then, like, if that was true, then there would be way more police hunting for them. And also, there is no media reports of like all these cities in France that are on fire while these characters go through them. So I suppose the semi-real worldness of that is blanked out by the complete ridiculousness of it happening in a vacuum that is apparently not reported.
Yeah, exactly. Because even so there's the shootout and then the car chase where the police are following them for a little bit, but again, they're not close enough to really ever seem like they're going to catch them. But that whole thing too, and I give it credit with the car chases because they're not as clean either. Like those car chases are them slamming into stuff. It's like the cars are getting wrecked where, normally in an action movie, like passing through everything and unscathed. And so like that too kind of has a sense of realism that they're messy car chases, but yeah, it just goes with that.
Yeah, for sure. But yes, there's lots of great, we'll obviously discuss that way more. There's lots of great car stuff. After they get away from the gun exchange, obviously there's a bit of a kind of car getaway from Larry. Despite acting the tough guy, Spence needs them to stop the car so he can get out and be sick. I do love the bit where Sean Bean is going like, "Oh, there's a bit of raspberry jam back there. Bit of raspberry jam, eh? I think he says it like 3 or 4 times. Yeah. It's very funny.
Yeah. I was actually, so while watching it this time, it's like, is that just a Mamet or whoever wrote it thing? I was going to ask you if it's, because a bit of raspberry jam is not a phrase we have over in the States. So it's going to be like, is that a thing? I've never heard that before. You know,
I believe it's Cockney rhyming. Yeah, I believe it's Cockney rhyming slang, for like a kind of like a tight spot kind of thing.
Okay. I know, the notion of being in a jam, but the bit of raspberry jam was new to me.
It's not a phrase here in Scotland either, but I believe it is kind of Cockney rhyming slang.
Yeah, and then so we get back to the warehouse where basically, Spence is given up, or that he's, Sam knows he's not who he says he is, and he even asks him about what was the color of the boat at the military, facility he said he was a part of, and he doesn't know how to answer it, even though Sam didn't know either.
It was the boathouse. It was the boathouse, not the boat.
Yes, yeah.
You can go on.
Oh, okay, no problem. But yeah, so he puts a cup of coffee and ends up spilling on Spence and kind of catches him off guard, and Sam is able to disarm him and basically say, I was able to ambush you with just a cup of coffee, because the whole lead up to that was Spence saying, okay, well, here's the diagram of what we're going to do, and we're going to set up a man here, and then we're just going to shoot at the cars, but the 2 men are basically opposite of each other on the different sides of the street. So Sam is saying, so we're going to go into this ambush, and you're going to have us shooting directly at each other. And yeah, he could just tell completely that Spence is not who he says he is. And then you kind of learn, but not fully, what you were talking about prior, where Spence was probably British military, but he was just kind of regular military and lied to get into this group to get, more money.
Yeah. And this the kind of outline how much money they're getting paid initially. So like when Deirdre first tells him about the plan, says he's getting paid $5,000 a week for 4 weeks, which is like 20 grand. Which 20 grand's a lot of money, but like 20 grand's not that much money when you're considering what they're doing. Like the high stakes of what they're doing. It doesn't seem like that much money. Yeah. Although then like Sam gets it up to like 100,000.
Yeah, because he knows that it's going to be a bigger ordeal, and that they're messing with something kind of beyond the amount of people that they have and what their capacity are. So he says he wants 100 grand up front and 100 grand after the fact, but he's a nice enough guy because he has a code. So he says he wants the 100 so that everybody deserves to have the 100 grand.
Which you think there would be a longer negotiation process, but basically Deirdre phones up her boss and it's just like, yep, that's okay now.
Yeah. And, this is when Spence is basically, he's just let go and told to not forget about them, but try and contact them again because they won't forget about him. And so, and then they say, you can leave after we're gone. But I know that whole bit, I'm not sure, I don't know where I'm going with it right now. I had a brain fart, but I know, oh dang it. I forgot where I was going with that whole bit. But yeah, so Spence is basically like, that's why I was reading up on it.
Mm-hmm.
I know John Frankenheimer, he talked about Spence was either supposed to die or he was supposed to be arrested by the police. So I think there was that they didn't know exactly what to do with Spence originally, because it was, kind of seems like it was a work in progress with that character.
There's a few moments like that, and there's a few character decisions that were kind of made at the last minute, it seems, with the film, for sure. There's one much later on, like right at the end. But, I read the same thing about, possibly Spence being like killed off or arrested or something. But he just gets to walk out the movie, which is unusual because you'd think, oh, this is Sean Bean. He's obviously going to get murdered. But no, he just gets to walk out of the film.
Yep.
And I had actually misremembered this movie.
What I'm realizing, actually, as we're talking about this more...
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how so?
Oh, just in terms of, I thought Sean Bean did actually die. Just because, that's just the association in my head, I suppose. I just automatically made that assumption of, doesn't Sean Bean die in this? No, it turns out he does not.
Yeah, no, I did too. Yeah, and I thought, as we were talking about before recording, that he was a villain. For some reason in my head, I was like, oh, he's working with Greg, or they're just in it together. But no, he's just, kind of this young kid who gets booted. That's it.
Yeah.
But what I was saying is I'm realizing, talking about this film over the ones we've talked about prior, is there is so much plot. And this is kind of what we're getting into, of normally in these episodes, it seems like we talk about very briefly, oh, this happens. And then our reaction, where this seems like it's like, okay, so this character is doing this thing and Sam is now negating that. And this one is now kind of double crossing them here, but he's not. And it's just, so for those of listening, they get to kind of see the process of this film if you haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, for sure. Cause yes, we kind of have to go into a little bit more detail of cause a lot of the films we talk about, we're kind of breaking down action sequences and stuff as opposed to strictly the plots, because often the plot's quite perfunctory. But in this one, it's just it's like a maze of things happening and people double crossing each other all the time. So we have to kind of deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at this particular juncture in the movie,
so basically they move after this. Yeah. Oh, you go.
So at this particular juncture in the movie, they cut to Nice. And then there's more kind of planning in a dingy hotel room where there's lots of kind of planning scenes, any kind of classic kind of heist movie. There's a bunch of them. We've already had one in the warehouse, and now here's one in the hotel room, and and then there's a kind of couple of kind of scoping out scenes. There's one where Sam takes Deirdre to a hotel where the, quote unquote bad guys, the other set of terrorists, the Russian mob are going to be there. He does some kind of spy tricks, to get some good, photos of them. And then there's another, kind of scoping out scene, which has, Sam and Deirdre in a car, looking onto the hotel, the hotel that the Russian mob are staying in. And this is where the love story starts, because first of all, a car goes by and Sam is like, oh, pretend we're both looking at a map. And then a police car goes by and, Sam snogs Deirdre just to distract the police, so it's like kind of like move on, nothing to see here apart from just a loving couple. But this impresses Deirdre so much that she, as soon as they stop kissing because the police car goes by, she comes on to Sam. And then it's like, oh, okay, there was an attraction there all along that we didn't really pick up on.
Yeah, because, besides this point, they've kind of been butting heads. And after this point, they're kind of butting heads the whole time. But in a way that it's not like butting heads. It doesn't feel like that in an attraction way. It just feels like, he's trying to figure out what's really happening, and she's not giving all the information to it. But yeah, this is kind of shows Sam even though he was ex-CIA, he's kind of an awful with spy tactics. And you were talking about prior, them just walking around and the cops thinking nothing of it. I mean, this hotel bit, they're just sitting there awkwardly. They're, if there were these highly trained bodyguards on this, for this guy with the case, you would think that they would have caught on, or, he's doing the thing with like taking the pictures and all that, and nobody's thinking anything of it. They're sitting across from a villa with all of the Russians and all of that, and nobody's thinking, oh, there's this car parked randomly in the middle of nowhere that can see this villa. It's just like all this stuff around that.
Yeah, everything's kind of done in broad daylight. It's quite funny. Oh, dear. But anyway, after that though, like, we kind of, as much as we can kind of, get kind of stuck on those points of the logic points of being like, well, this doesn't really make much sense. It's sometimes that all gets eradicated because sometimes a fun action scene happens not long after that. And that's exactly what happens.
Yes.
Long after this, because fun action time's just around the corner as we get the main heist. Well, this is the heist. There's no really other heist in the movie. There's other car chases and stuff, but, this is it. And, so we get, Vincent, John Reno's character. He has a little kind of device that can change the traffic lights. So he stops the traffic. And then they're not the most subtle of bunch. Sam just blows up a car.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, they're just having this firefight in the middle of, like, there's these cafes and people are being shot up.
This is central Nice.
Smashed into tables but then it gets, and it gets into it's a fun car chase, that whole section.
Yeah, it is a fun section. So he blows up one car, and then there is a gunfight, and then, like, we get a kind of series of car chases. De Niro, Sam and Vincent are in one car, and they chase after another car. And one of the craziest things that I read about, in the making of this movie is, Frankenheimer was really, really wanted to do kind of everything practical. So there's lots of practical stunt work on this. So the second car that Sam blows up, like when he comes out the sunroof with the bazooka, like there's somebody in that car. There's like a stunt driver in that car when it explodes and flips forwards. Some of the stunt work in this movie is absolutely nuts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hopefully they got paid a good amount for that.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Well, yeah, hopefully they did. Cause some of the stunt work's absolutely crazy. And then we kind of cut to, we're kind of cutting back and forth. So Sam and Vincent take out the car that they need to take out. And then there is another two cars. And this is where Larry comes in. Now, we've also got, this is, yeah, there's many moving pieces we have to deal with in this movie, isn't there? So Deirdre and Gregor, they're in a van, and he's doing tech stuff, and he's, connected to a satellite so he can see where all the cars are at, and gives everybody their positions of where they need to be and, what to do. So he tells Larry when to come out on the two cars that he's after. So he takes out one car, he just drives right through it. And then he chases after the target car that has the case in it. And they go on, like a really fun car chase. First it's on the road, and then it's off the road, and the kind of down the side of this hill, and then they cut back into town, and they're driving through the streets of Nice. And I think like one of my favorite things in this chase is when they come back into town, and there is just like a close-up shot of like a bunch of, like, it cuts away from the cars. There's a close-up shot of like a bunch of fish heads, and you're like, oh, they're going to drive through a market. That's a fun spot, isn't it? And then it pans back to the cars, and then they drive through the market. Love it.
Yeah. And they don't it's not just like one car. They have 4 different cars smashed through that market.
Oh, and that is like, that is the kind of the most Bond moment of the movie, because like in the background of the shot, you get the reaction of the market stall owners of like, one's just like holding their, hands on their hips, and one is like throwing their hands up in the air, and it's just like, classic stuff.
Yeah. And so they're finally, so Larry's able to get ahead of them because they're going down different alleyways, and he then basically smashes into them to get them to stop. So they're able to they basically just execute all of the people in that car. And Gregor's supposed to take the case.
Yeah. Oh, we should point out, we should, before we go on.
Which we see very clearly.
Yeah, but we should point out before we go on with more plot stuff. Like, so Larry, he takes out the target car because of Gregor's instructions, and the target car runs into a restaurant, and we get more insane practical stunt work as I saw the little making of that you can watch on YouTube if you want. Just type in making of Ronin, and actual stunt drivers sitting at those restaurant tables that car drives into, and they just jump on top of the bonnet. Oh dear. God bless stunt people.
Yeah. No, they need to be recognized with the Academy Awards.
Oh, absolutely.
Been a big fight for a long time.
I mean, the stunt people, this is absolutely a movie that stunt people need to be recognized, because some of the practical stunts in this movie, just jaw-dropping.
Yeah. So after all of that, then comes the execution of all of the people in the car. And then we see Gregor basically take the case, put it into a bag, and then then the cops are coming, the useless cops, I guess. And so he says, okay, you go on, hurry. And so he hands the case to Sam, a different case. And then Gregor is kind of nowhere to be seen as a car blows up. And Sam is running to the car, hands the case to Larry, but notices his hands are covered in paint. So he realizes they've been double-crossed. He tells Larry to throw the case, and it was a bomb, and it blows up a car. And so they just pretty much drive away without the case or anything.
Yeah. They don't drive away in that much of a hurry, to be fair. Which is quite fun. No. Again, just the uselessness of the police. They're just so confident that the police in this universe are just rubbish. So they can just go at their own pace. It's fine. They just drive away relatively fast, but not crazy or anything.
Yeah. So after they kind of realize they've been betrayed, they then mosey around away from the police. And they end up driving back to their hotel where now they're trying to figure out how to catch Gregor. And Sam happens to know, even though he didn't really want to reveal any of this information, he kind of says that he can find a way to triangulate Gregor's cell phone so that they can track him. And so that's what they end up going to do, is meet up with Sam's contact, who tries not to seem like they know each other at first, by even when Sam is asking for where's the post office, and the guy basically treats him like a stranger until, the guy gets in the car and they get closer, and then he says, "Okay, I thought you were gone. Okay, who do you need me to find?" And then, so that is kind of the whole setup for that portion of it, of tracking Gregor.
Yeah. Hey, before we get the scene with De Niro meeting up with his old CIA pal, who, like, again, there's that fun rapport between Sam and Vincent, where, like, Vincent's like, who's that guy? And he's like, I knew him from high school. So it's just, kind of fun back and forth, which kind of comes back. There's a callback to that later on in the movie. But before that, we get, like, Gregor being real creepy because he collects his payment for getting the case, getting the package. And because, like, this is this film's MO that everybody just double crosses everybody as just a matter of course. The guy who is his contact, who he meets up to hand off the package to, attempts to kill Gregor, because why not? Also, I like this character is just referred to in the credits as Dapper Gent. That's a fun credit. But Gregor is, he basically stops his car and takes aim at a random schoolgirl in a playground. And, and it's just like, well, imagine what I do to you if I would just, shoot at this, random schoolgirl. And nobody reacts to that. Like, he shoots the top of, like, a kind of, a bit of playground equipment anyway. And, like, none of the kids are like, holy fuck. Nobody reacts to that. It's just a little, I suppose, like, it's got a silencer, like, so maybe that didn't make much of a noise. I don't know. Anyway, some things in this movie don't make sense. So, yeah, he does that. It's weird as well, because this is the second movie we've talked about the Assassins being the other one that a psychotic character just randomly threatens school children.
Yeah, because it's one of those scenes, and we talked about it before recording, where, some of my beliefs, about it are, again, I think it's a great movie. I love this movie, but watching it for this podcast, like, I could see the plot. Like, there's too many, I don't know, in a way there's too much going on that as we've been discussing, it convolutes everything. And this is another one of those where I get the element that he's selling it to the Russians and all of that, but then a part of it also feels like it isn't necessary. It's like only there to show that Gregor is actually really a bad guy because he's willing to shoot a child type of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And then, like, we don't get enough kind of backstory on things of just, like, we get, like, just a touch of backstory of, like, oh, he's obviously pissed off these Russian mobsters in some way, which leads to many questions. It leads to the main question being, like, why would Gregor do this for the Russian mobsters? Presumably for the money, I guess. But then why would the Russian mobsters trust this character who they obviously want to kill? And I don't know. Like, there's just there's just a series of questions it leads to. But anyway, that's what happens. And the guy who tries to kill Gregor ends up dead.
Yeah, Gregor hits the accelerator and then slams on the brakes to get the guy to basically be off center with his gun in the car, so Gregor has enough time to grab his gun and shoot him.
I mean, even in my notes that I've made for the film in the episode, it sounds convoluted. Literally, in my notes, I've written down Gregor collecting money for double cross, and then is nearly double crossed, but then kills that guy.
Yeah.
Dear.
And that whole scene is kind of the movie in a nutshell, I guess. Is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it keeps tying itself in knots for very little reason.
So after that this is when we get into them meeting the contact very briefly when they're at the cafe.
That's right. Yeah. And, also,
which, let's talk about prior.
Yep. You can keep going.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then this is where we finally get to learn Sam's name, and you can tell that he was not happy that his name is given because up until this point, he's provided very little information to everybody that he's been working with.
Yeah. And it's also at this point that we get, so a scene that we didn't mention because it is literally a 2-second scene. There is a scene earlier on in the movie where the character of Seamus, who is played by Jonathan Pryce, who is like Deirdre's IRA boss, he appeared and gave her some information. And he now reappears in the movie at this point, where they're kind of like, so the action kind of moves to, another town. They move away from, Nice to a place called Arles. And, so again, we're kind of cutting back and forth between a few things. Gregor is cutting a deal with the Russians, and one of the Russian mobsters, Sergei, is trying to convince Gregor that he didn't have anything to do with that hit. That was just one rogue guy, off his own back, decided they wanted to kill Gregor. Gregor's not convinced. Sam and the gang have managed to catch up with Gregor. So then he kind of grabs Gregor. And we also see one of the few people who does bother with like disguises and actual kind of sneaking about is the character of Seamus. I mean, to an extent, to the greatest extent of anybody in this movie.
Yeah. Meaning that he puts on a hat sometimes. That's his big disguise.
Yeah, puts his hat down as well, puts his head down and the hat down, and pretends to be other people. He tries. He tries a little, at least he's semi-conscious of hiding who he is, because apparently he can't show his face in public for reasons that are undisclosed. That's another title that could be for this movie, Reasons Undisclosed.
Yeah. And then he goes, and so he ends up going up to Larry and pulling almost the same type of, I guess, shtick that they would have done to other people, of acting like a terrorist, and he's just talking to Larry, and you kind of know, well, something's going to happen, even though Larry is technically working for him. But regardless of that, then we get to a point where it's like this kind of fight and shootout between trying to capture Gregor, the Russians, and then the team, which, Vincent is about to be killed by these Russians, the Russians that he knew at some point because of Venice, but you don't necessarily, again, for reasons undisclosed, you don't know why, just something must have happened.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then finally Sam saves him, but is shot in the stomach in the process. And then, Deidre runs back to the car, or Gregor is able to run away, but he gets knocked out by, Seamus. And then Deidre runs back to the car only to find, Sheamus in the back with Gregor knocked out, and for some reason Sheamus slit Larry's neck and then he just tells her to drive.
Yeah.
And so,
again,
so
more double crosses for the sake of
Sam
double crosses. Oh, this is a thing that before we kind of keep on trucking with the plot. Another thing that we should point out, because at each point I feel that we need to doff our cap to the stunt work in this movie. So you know how there's a fight between Sam and Gregor at the in the kind of Colosseum style arena that is in Arliss, right? So the bit where Sam kind of like bull rushes him against the railing, and they fall over the railing. Yeah. Yeah,
where they flip over the
they flip over the railing. So like basically in the script, what was supposed to happen was that Sam pushes Gregor into the railing. And then that's it. They do not fall over the railing. The fall was an accident. So, the stunt guys fell over the railing, and because it was an accident, obviously this was a stunt that was not prepared for, so they just fall on the steps. There is no crash mat. That's why it looks so painful, is because it was a genuine accident that Frankenheimer thought looked so good on camera. He was like, "Oh, we'll keep that."
Jeez, that's insane. Well, going based off of that, and then that also has a ton of stuff with, again, innocent bystanders, where they're just like, you see so many people, they're tourists, like on a tour in the stadium, are just getting shot at point blank because people are basically grabbing these tourists as human shields, and there's that guy who gets hit right in the chest and you just see the squib of blood spray out.
Yeah, well, that one's particularly brutal. The guy who gets shot in the gut. Yeah, that looks real nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, this movie has a real reckless abandon for human life. It really does.
Yeah, especially for the fact that, I guess, the big reveal of Sam with his honor code and everything. And you're kind of like, for a guy with like such a huge honor code, you're like, definitely let a lot of these people die.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah, for sure. He's so deep undercover. I'll get to that more, I suppose. But then, so they drive away. Yeah, like you say, Larry got his throat slit, even though Sheamus technically hired them. So like, I don't know. And there's no reason for that either. Deirdre even asks him about it later on, and he just like, "Oh, I'm just clearing up your mess." And you're like, that's not an answer. Like, it really doesn't make sense that you killed this guy. Like, Gregor betrayed you. Larry didn't, like, what? Anyway, double crosses for the sake of double crosses. That's what this movie's all about. But then, so we follow, Vincent and Sam. They've got to drive away. Sam's got to try and find himself a doctor. There's like a lovely shot, like, of the, before they kind of pan back into like Sam and Vincent's car. It's just like a lovely random shot of the mountains. And like, obviously they watch some Steven Seagal films because you get that classic eagle call sound as well. Caw, And then also like, this is also the point in the movie where like, there's like this kind of Middle Eastern music sting that occasionally happens when Vincent's speaking. And it's the kind of Middle Eastern music sting that you often hear in kind of action thriller type movies that involve Muslim terrorists. Like it's the same music. They play the same music, it's that classic bit of music that's always played when they're in the mosque just before they're about to do the terrorist attack.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is.
Yeah, no, it kind of feels weird. I remember taking note of it. I'll agree with that. But
Yeah, the rest of the scores, I like the rest of the score. I just don't feel it fits. Like, that's the Middle Eastern kind of, I don't know where that really came from. It doesn't really seem to fit the tone of the movie. I don't know.
But yeah, so Sam and Vincent are Vincent is taking Sam somewhere to get himself patched up. That's better than, trying to sneak into a doctor's office or a veterinary clinic and like boost supplies. And then during that same time, we're also getting where Deidre and Seamus are interrogating Gregor. And he said that the case he mailed it to himself. So it will be here, you're guessing, in a few days. But yeah, throughout that time, you're basically seeing them taking him to the post office. The package isn't there, and he's all bruised up and beaten up. So he breaks pretty easily for being ex-KGB, too.
Yeah, he absolutely does. I think, like, it's the scene at, so Sam and Vincent, like, in their part of the plot that's happening now, they stop off at Vincent's friend's house, Jean-Pierre, played by veteran French actor Michael Lonsdale. And as also I mentioned before we started recording, I think it's worth mentioning that this film has not one, not two, but 3 Bond villains in it. Because Jonathan Pryce plays the Bond villain in Tomorrow Never Dies, who I actually can't remember the name of, but he's kind of a Rupert Murdoch type. And Sean Bean plays the bad guy in GoldenEye, who's like a kind of rogue ex-MI6 agent. And Michael Lonsdale, in this scene, played the bad guy in the 1979 Roger Moore Bond film Moonraker. And he has, I always remember his name because he has one of the best Bond villain names, Hugo Drax. Some Bond knowledge for you all there.
There you go. And he also, in this movie, he brings about the only conversation to connect it to the title of the film.
Yes. So he tells the story of the 47 Ronin, and he explains what a Ronin is. We got the definition at the start of the film, but like he explains further what a Ronin is and explains the story of the 47 Ronin. And he talks a lot about the warrior code. And so the story of the 47 Ronin is supposed to be like the central metaphor, like a parable for Sam's journey in the film. Even though it turns out that that's not true.
No, not at all. Like, it's not connected at all.
Because, like, they're supposed to be masterless warriors, and then you find out at the end of the movie, well, he's not being a masterless warrior at all. He does follow the warrior code, but, like, he's actually, no, it doesn't add up. And also, like, it's also like this weird thing as well, where like he gives a speech and you're like, oh, well, this is obviously the central metaphor for the film. And then like it has this kind of heavy foreshadowing as like, oh, obviously Sam is going to die. Spoiler alert. No, he does not. Cause you think it's clever foreshadowing, but by the end of the movie, you're just like, well, what was that about then?
Yeah. I'm curious if there was more connection, if it's either they added the title after the fact, like later on, to make it, I don't know, to give it a different type of feel, or if in the original script there's more connection to like the Ronin element and a samurai movie element.
I don't know, like, I feel like, even though actually reading stuff from John Frankenheimer saying that the key inspiration for the movie was actually the film The Battle of Algiers, which I've not seen, but it's supposed to be one of the best films of all time. But I feel like probably this is also a film I've not seen, but I've heard it as an influence. It seems like Le Samurai, the Jean-Pierre Melville film, was an influence. So like maybe that kind of connection. And like I do almost wonder, I know like Jean-Pierre is like a generic French name as well, but I do almost wonder, like, you know, was this character named that because of like the Jean-Pierre Melville thing? I don't know. Just a theory.
That makes sense because, I mean, some of my notes that I didn't get into is like with the opening title of Ronin and the like very bright red, some of the blood color with their bright red. There's elements in it where you think, well, maybe it has that kind of connection to like the samurai movie or whatever, because you can see that influence, and then it just doesn't utilize it farther than that. Then it, you know, it takes on more of like a European heist or conspiracy movie or whatever it may be than anything, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. And I feel there is almost, I don't know, like, it almost feels like there's more. John Frankenheimer also directed The French Connection too. And you do feel like there's like a strong kind of like French Connection style influence as well, because it feels like one of those. It's funny because like I feel in some ways this movie like predicts some later action movies, but it does also, because like I feel that this movie possibly influenced the first Bourne movie, because like I feel like that has a similar feel, that movie, the first Bourne movie, which feels slightly different to the, you know, the second and third installments. Like, yeah. But anyway, it also has like a very strong throwback feel of like, it does feel like an action movie from like the early 70s, which is not surprising given like, you know, the kind of era Frankenheimer came out of. You know, it's not surprising it has this kind of throwback feel to it, and it does feel like one of those kind of grittier, harder edged kind of 70s style action movies in the vein of something like The French Connection. And also like it also has a certain feel of something like the Day of the Jackal as well, which is another movie set in, you know, action thriller, I suppose, set in France, and which also stars Michael Lonsdale as well in a supporting role. Yeah, you can see a lot of different kind of influences going on. And also in my head, I always connect this film to Mission Impossible, because like they have similar feels to them and they have similar convoluted plots. I mean, like the original 1996 Mission Impossible movie. That's what I mean, not the TV series or the later films.
Yeah.
Maybe also because I saw them both, you know, in a similar time period as well, within like a year of each other, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can see that. So next, how is that? So next up, we've basically this back and forth where you're seeing them try and get the case with Deidre and Seamus with Gregor, and then it goes into
Craig
trying to.
Yeah, before we go any further with the plot, I do feel we would be remiss if we didn't call back to your initial quote at the start of the episode, where like Sam is doing kind of self-surgery as he's directing Vincent to get the bullet out of him, and he has like two great lines where Vincent is like, are you sure this is kind of going to go all right, basically? And Sam was, you know, it says, oh yeah, you know, I once took out a man's appendix with a grapefruit spoon, which is a great line. And then he also has the great line of like, if you don't mind guys, I think I'm going to pass out, which is the most casual way to say it. It's so funny. The way De Niro delivers that line is, chef's kiss, amazing.
Yeah. And it has a lot of great, that scene has a lot of great tension, even though it's kind of quick. And where you see Vincent, he's spreading open the bullet wound with one pair of the pliers and grabbing the bullet. And at one point he grabs it and starts to kind of take it out, but it slips out of the thing. And so then he has to do it again. And, it's really quiet. But you can only really see it from the mirror in they set up like a mirror to help Sam see what's going on, and you see it from that point of view. I think the shots and it adds the element of tension to it.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, I suppose we better get back on with we still got a bunch of plot to go, so we truck on with more double crosses and stuff. Yes, they go to collect the case. Like you say, Gregor kind of gives up pretty easily, of just being like, yeah, okay, I'll take you to the post office, and then. But Sam and Vincent are hot on their tails, and they're also at the post office. Oh, this is another great line that I really entertained me, because again, I feel like it kind of sums up the movie as well. Of so Sam and Vincent are sitting in the car, and Vincent's like, "Oh, how did you know that there was a sniper at the gun exchange?" And Sam says rule number one that they taught us was when there is any doubt, there is no doubt. Which is one of those lines that's like, that sounds cool and philosophical, but then at the same time you think about it and you're like, what does that mean? like any time you have any gut feeling that something isn't quite right, you just assume somebody's going to kill you? Like, what? I don't I don't know.
And that's why there's so many double crosses. They can't work with each other.
Yeah, because we just assume, double cross is coming. When there is any doubt, there is no doubt. Okay. Motto for life.
Yeah. Well, and it has then the second, and then he says, well, where'd you learn that? Well, rule number 2. I can't remember. It's basically rule number 2. I forgot where I learned it.
Yeah. That's basically it. Rule number 2 is you forget everything. Yeah. Which is why he's not very good at spycraft, because he's deliberately forgotten everything.
Yeah.
Oh dear. But
so they're able to get him. Sam gets basically holds Deidre at gunpoint because she's the new getaway driver. And then Vincent points a gun at Seamus and Gregor, but Deidre knows that Sam isn't going to shoot, so she just hits the accelerator and heads towards Vincent, and Vincent dives out of the way, which gives time for everybody to get in the car. And then, Vincent has the thing of yelling at Sam of why didn't he just shoot her? Which you're kind of wondering. I mean, there's the shoehorn element again.
Well, this is love story moment number 2. This is love story moment number 2.
Yeah.
Of they're clearly so deeply in love. That's why Sam can't shoot Deidre.
Well, then it's interesting because by the end it paints Deirdre as this unfortunate soul who also had a code. But you're watching this car chase that follows, and so many people are killed because of her.
That is very true.
How is he just willing to let all this go by the end, especially?
Yeah. That is one thing that I want to point out in this movie's favor. For a film made in 1998, which I know isn't that long ago, and we think of to think of, not being, further back being not so progressive. But anyway, for a film made at this time, it's relatively progressive in the portrayal of Deirdre, because she is not viewed by the movie as lesser than because she is a female character. It is not really brought up much there's no kind of like sexist banter with the character of like, like why are you handling this, or like, that would have been typical, for this time period, or typical for an action movie of just like, some kind of, sexist back and forth, where she has to bat off some sexist comments or whatever. She's just like treated as just one of the other characters, just like the guys. Like there's no real separation there, and that's I think that's kind of weirdly progressive for the time.
It is, yeah, and I think it does. I don't know, it plays in a way where I know it happened with like Streets of Fire or Alien, or where it's where it feels like it was written well, with the exception of the love shoehorn scenes that are in the movie. It feels like it was written like as like a kind of genderless role, like you were saying, that could have been played by any character really, or any person.
Yeah. And I think again it's kind of unusual that she is like one of the key plot motivators as well. Like, like this car chase that, happens, is struck off by her, like, and yeah, she, like you say, it's like this kind of genderless character, that could kind of been played by anyone. It's not like the typical female character. And like, I know the kind of love story is kind of shoehorned in, but like, it doesn't take away from her character in a way that, as we've discussed in a lot of movies previously, where, a female character started off as, like quick-witted and courageous and, badass and stuff like that. But, and clever and, but then slowly gets, dumber and more useless and considerably less badass as the running time goes on. Like Deirdre stays kind of the character she is throughout the movie. Like her character has a clear arc of like, she never, changes in a way that doesn't make sense. Yeah,
no, I agree. And I think, and she does, for a movie like this, it was that potential for her to like end up in the like femme fatale role. And it doesn't go that way either, which was nice.
Yeah, that's true. For sure. Yeah, they don't use her sexuality in any way really. So it's a nice change of pace, and I think the film deserves kudos for that. But I suppose we should talk about the big car chase. Now, we already had one car chase that could easily be one of the best car chases in any movie of the 90s. But this car chase is possibly the best car chase ever put on film. And I'm not exaggerating on that. Literally, like, in the terms of like all-time great car chases, obviously the ones that are often brought up are the one in the original French Connection, the one in the Steve McQueen movie, Bullet. This, for me, is the best car chase I have ever seen in a film. So often the best car chases of all time, the ones that are often considered kind of top of the list, are from the original French Connection and from the Steve McQueen movie Bullet. But for me personally, I think this is the best car chase I have ever seen in a film. And I have seen both Bullet and the French Connection and a bunch of other action movies with some fine car chases in them. But for me, this is the creme de la creme.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's just the kind of crazy stunt work in it. I mean, apparently they used 300 stunt drivers to do this big car chase that goes right through Paris. It's genuinely insane. There's so many kind of high spots throughout the car chase. It's filmed brilliantly. They're like they go through like a couple of different tunnels. There's like these kind of big pileups. There's like there's like a lorry that flips over and explodes, and they're weaving in and out of. I think it's like the kind of tight spaces as well, because they're like weaving in and out of this traffic. They're driving the wrong way down these kind of, these kind of, obviously, the roads are smaller in a European city to like a big American highway, which makes it feel more claustrophobic and kind of intense and stuff as well. And it's just, it's just real good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then I suppose after, I suppose it's kind of unfortunate because like the big car chase, this second car chase that goes through Paris is such an adrenaline rush that the climax of the movie is somewhat anticlimactic. Like, like the car chase and certain other scenes in this movie have always been kind of emblazoned in my memory of watching it, a bunch of times in my teens and early 20s. And then, like, I never quite remember the ending. So yeah, okay. So this like last section of the film, it just gets like a little blurry for me, even though I've watched this a bunch, like I said, throughout my teens and 20s, but always kind of, it's a bit of a blur at the end of the movie. And rewatching it does, we're not quite at the end, but we're, at the kind of final section of the film. And this, final section, it's a bit anticlimactic, I suppose. Although it does have a hilarious bit of, plot mechanics. When we get, Sam and Vincent in the cafe. And I know you really want to take this one, Craig, so take us through that.
Yeah, so they know by this point so this is when they start to learn it. So basically, they know that Gregor switched the cases, but he didn't have time to go get a specially made case, and they made cases apparently.
I suppose, just quickly, I'll interject that we should say that the car chase ends with the car falling off a part of a half-made bridge, and that Gregor escapes with the case, and Seamus is presumed dead, and Deirdre is taken out of the car by some construction workers. So, just in terms of, so people know what's happening in the plot, and then we cut to Sam and Vincent in this cafe figuring shit out, and back to you, Craig.
Yeah. And a scene where all these other cars blow up so easily and their car like falls off of a bridge, lands, but yeah. Anyways, we won't get into that logic. Basically, they're sitting there and they're trying to figure out how do they find him now with the case, and that he switched the cases obviously, but these cases aren't just your normal cases. So he would have had to have it custom made. No, he couldn't have had it custom made. It would have been too long of a process since he was in the hotel the whole time. Wait a minute. There's two little girls that are walking by that have cases exactly like the cases that Gregor had, except they're not silver. Well, maybe let's just ask. So then Vincent goes and asks the father, I'm guessing, of the two girls, and then comes back inside, and they're ice skating cases. And they even ask at one point, how would he have went out to buy spray paint or know what the case would have even looked like, which then isn't even explained. It's just, again, like many other things.
Undisclosed reasons, remember?
Yes, the title of the movie, Undisclosed Reasons. But yeah, that's the first thing of like, we need to start wrapping this movie up, and I don't know where to go. So yeah, there's the cases, and this is where it's going to go because the plot says so. So then they realize they don't have to actually find Gregor. They need to find the Russian. And if they find the Russians, then Gregor will come to them. So they go and they meet a contact of Vincent's who knows, I guess, who's a mechanic and is Russian, so he knows Russians. That's the thing. Because he just seems like kind of a regular mechanic working guy who just happens to be Russian.
Yes, he doesn't seem like he has like Russian mafia connections necessarily. But like Vincent has a contact. Like basically, we're it's not really explained. We just cut to this scene with this mechanic. So obviously Vincent knows a guy who knows a guy. So he's got the contact who knows the mechanic. And then they just grill him about kind of, is there a lot of guys who've been in the garage, like throwing money about, and like the way the mechanic plays it is like he literally knows nothing and just wants to get on with his day and doesn't know why these strange men are bothering him. And then he becomes entirely unnecessary to the plot as well because they do not get any information out of him. He just returns to his day, taking a phone call from a customer, and then the contact of Vincent points out a massive poster for the ice skating show that just so happens to be happening tonight and says like, if you're looking for Russians, you probably should look for them. I'd look for them right there. And you're like, why didn't you point that poster out before? Like, and if you knew if you knew the Russian gangsters were going to be at this, like, ice skating show, then why go through this rigmarole of, like, taking Sam and Vincent to this apparent contact, non-contact? It's funny. It's funny that this scene is in the movie, but it doesn't make a goddamn lick of sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's there to just, so that they don't have to try and explain, I guess, to keep it at a 2-hour time mark is what it feels like. Like, because the only way to get through this appropriately would be to add like another 3 or 4 scenes, but we'll just add this one to kind of to broadly cover all of our bases to move forward.
Yeah, but it moves the plot. Yes, it's kind of a quick 10 minutes to just move the plot forward so we don't have to spend any more time investigating because we gotta be out of here in 2 hours, so fuck you guys.
Yeah. So then they go to this, so again, it kind of shifts away for a second from Sam and Vincent, and it's at this ice rink, and you see Mikhail, the kind of Russian mob leader, and he's going to sit in his seat, and then, Sam and Vincent are watching him, and then he gets word that, there's somebody that wants to meet him, and he goes to see the person, and it happens to be Gregor, even though they were supposed to meet later on. Gregor wants to chat now. And Gregor basically gives this whole ultimatum saying, you have to give me the money. I just want my money and I'll give you this. But if I don't make this phone call in a minute, then I have a sniper who I've worked with many times and she's great and never misses. And she'll shoot your lover and the figure skater, who
is a real figure skater, 2-time Olympic champion, Katrina Witt.
Yes. And so that's the whole thing. And Mikhail, he pulls the gun on Gregor, and Gregor is trying to like call his bluff, and he's counting down saying 45 seconds, 30, 15. And it just, the bluff doesn't work because Mikhail, shoots Gregor when he gets to, I guess, the 0 mark and lets his girlfriend get shot anyways, just so he can keep the money and the case, I guess. But during this time, Sam and Vincent are trying to get back there because they know, but Sam has to knock out one of the guys. And this is where that callback was, where Vincent was asking a guy about if there was any Russians there, and the guy gives all this information, and Sam asks how he knew the guy, and Vincent makes the comment about, we're old friends from high school.
Yeah. Although in this context, I was like, either that is correct, and they actually were, or he is using it in the same way that Sam used it, which leads me to the question, is Paris just full of ex-mercenaries or ex-Secret Service people? Like, just the whole city is full of them? Like, we just meet so many of them. It's just like, wow, that seems like, more than you would. But anyway, it's the kind of thing that you can get away with in an action movie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I feel like Vincent's character, it'd make more sense if it was just somebody from high school, because the guy is just like a security officer or whatever.
Yeah, he's just a regular old security guard, yeah.
And Vincent, for the most part, seems, I don't know, because he's kind of taught stuff throughout by Sam or certain things. So it really feels like as you're watching it, that it's just kind of, he's hired to show these mercenaries or whoever around town and to make sure they get all the resources they need. But that's primarily it. I think that he's not, X whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair point. I did, like, one weird thing that I think comes out of this scene as well is, like, so when the ice skater, the character's called Natasha, when she's shot, and then, like, basically, obviously, we get the classic thing of, like, everybody in the arena is shocked and people are running out of their chairs and everything, and there's mayhem going on and the police officers are trying to interview people and stuff like that. Mikhail comes out the dressing room, the kind of back VIP area where he shot Gregor, and the police try to stop him. And then at that point, he takes out his passport and says, "I'm a Chilean citizen." And I was like, What's that got to do with anything? Like, does that make you less suspicious? Like, are you pretending not to be Russian? Like, why would that make a difference at all?
Yeah. At that point, it doesn't seem like it would matter.
It's like, yeah, but he'd still want to question you. It doesn't matter what citizen, it doesn't matter what country you come from. Like, and it's very random as well, where he's like, he just, looks Russian, has a Russian accent. He's like, I'm a Chilean citizen.
Yeah. At least it should have had him speaking in the Spanish, or something.
Yeah. I mean, still, it shouldn't make a difference, but at least I don't know. What I did there was I started out with a semi-Russian accent, but then I was just Sean Connery, for some reason. I think I was just thinking of Hunt for the Red October. If anybody wants to pick me up on my accent there, I don't know what happened there. It started out Russian in my head and just became Sean Connery for some reason. I'm Scottish. I don't know. And so it's obviously some sort of infection. Anyway, we should probably go back to the plot. So like this is where Seamus reappears.
Yeah. And so you see a police officer consoling a little girl who's crying for her mom because everybody had, panicked and scattered out. And then, Mikhail and I guess his bodyguard are walking. And then the police officer is actually Seamus, who has this big burn on his face. And he shoots both of the men and takes the case. And then he basically runs off into the crowd, and Sam tells Vincent to keep track of him because he knows that Deidre is going to be somewhere nearby. So this is the final part of the love.
Yeah, this is love story moment number 3, the final chapter.
Yeah. And so he goes up to her in the car and basically says, you need to go now, even though, she killed all these people, especially with his reveal, why he is so willing to let it happen. And she then says, well, you can come with me. Let's just, does that whole thing of, we can both just drop this, we can run off together, until he finally admits, I'm not here, I was never here for the money, I'm here for Seamus. And because I never left, he finally reveals he's still an undercover CIA agent, which then she just takes off, leaving Seamus. And it's kind of a weird, an awkward scene that goes up. So Seamus is running. There's all these cops, and the contact for Sam sees Seamus. He points him out to the cops. They're kind of not really being too hasty about it. They're like, "Oh, hey, come over here so we can talk to you." Because
I think we've established the cops are useless in this movie.
Yeah, and Sam is sitting right next to him and holding him, but yet he never tries to disarm Seamus with the fact that Seamus is still holding a gun and just standing right next to him. So when Seamus turns to shoot Sam, then Vincent quickly jumps in the way and basically takes two in the stomach again. And then, that whole setup to me felt weird.
I think it's edited weird. Yeah, it's just like, it doesn't look quite right. And it's kind of hard to tell what's going on, and then it kind of just happens and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, all right. And then, so you're right, it's weird. But then, Seamus runs away and Sam gives chase.
Yes, and they end up back in the ice rink, to which, they're kind of able to confront each other, but Sam is shot in the arm by Seamus, and right before Seamus is going to kill Sam, then Vincent saves the day and shoots Seamus, and then Vincent passes out. I guess is kind of what you see. Yes,
that is true. And you're kind of like, oh, did he? It's kind of done to kind of make you believe that he's died. He's died in that moment, which he's not. But it's kind of you get 2 seconds of suspense of like, oh no, Vincent has died. That Vincent, Sam's true life partner. The story with Deirdre is just a disguise. Like this is a true relationship of the movie.
Yeah, and so then what we get is basically a shot, just buildings, and you're kind of hearing from BBC worldwide that a peace agreement has been kind of made between Northern Ireland and the more well-known Protestant, Irish government in the south.
Yeah,
so and it's all kind of because of the fact that Seamus has been killed now.
This is genuinely amazing when it tries to tie into so this movie came out in 1998, and it's real funny when this movie right at the end tries to tie it into the real world, where we find out that Sam and Vincent were responsible for the Good Friday Agreement. Which is the Northern Ireland peace treaty that happened in real life. I think it was the year before. I think it was 97 or earlier in 98. I think it was 97 was the Good Friday peace agreement, which led to the putting down of arms of the two sides. Or in Northern Ireland, the UVF being the Protestant terrorism group and the IRA being the Catholic one, and this kind of agreement, this peace treaty agreement, and so this movie just tacks this on at the end. And by the way, it was Sam and Vincent. They made that happen. Good Friday Peace Agreement. Well done. It feels real tacked on.
Yeah. Now, the final scene, it's weird because it's giving you this whole information, and it seems like you see Sam's contact pull up in the car, and he looks into the diner, and there's Sam and Vincent, and they're talking, and the kind of news broadcast is still going on. And you think, okay, so that's how it's going to end. You're going to see them talking, and then they're going to go their separate ways. Like, that would kind of make sense, I guess, in a way, because you're not actually hearing what they're saying, or whatever. But then it basically then reiterates, I guess, what they would have said. So it's kind of odd, and I don't know if it's the cutting necessarily, but just the way that the scene is displayed.
Well,
but Yeah, it's Sam and Vincent, and they're basically,
Yeah, they re-edited the ending. Apparently the original, Sam says to Vincent, well, I wonder if she's going to appear kind of thing, meaning Deirdre. So in the original ending, Deirdre does appear outside the doors of the cafe and is considering going in, but is then at the kind of door of the cafe abducted by the IRA, presumably murdered off screen. But apparently test audiences really hated that ending. And didn't want the character of Deirdre to die, so they cut that out of the movie.
Okay.
But that is the original ending. And apparently there is
that makes
a special edition that has that ending on it. I don't know if the Blu-ray you have has that's one of the deleted scenes. But apparently there is one of the special editions that does have that original ending as one of the deleted scenes or whatever, and it is the ending that Frankenheimer wanted, but he went with because the test audiences hated it so much, he agreed with the studio that they would have to go with something else, and that's what they go with.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense because it feels a little awkward, but yeah, it's basically him saying, well, I can't pay for the bill because of my arm, because he has a cast, or that he's shot in it, so he has a sling, Sam, which is a pretty good way to get out of paying for a film.
Yeah, I can't reach into my wallet because this one arm, the other arm that's working, don't care about that. You could have put your wallet in another pocket. No. I really need this one arm. I always put it in that pocket, so it really fucks it up. That's that. So you're gonna have to pay. Sorry about that, or not.
Yeah.
So Vincent, he pays the bill. I must say though that this film ends. This film ends perfectly, because all the questions we've asked about the logic of some of these double crosses, the logic of the lack of spycraft used throughout the movie, for most of the movie, by most of the characters who sporadically use spycraft, the lack of police presence in the film, right? That's all swept under the carpet by this final quote. So the movie ends with a narration from John Reno, as the character Vincent, who says the following: "No questions, no answers. That's the business we're in. You accept it and move on. Maybe that is lesson number 3." Which is basically see all those questions you have about the film, fuck off, we're not going to answer.
Yeah, that's exactly how it felt. Because, it even has him, he's asking Sam what was finally in the box, and Sam says he doesn't know, and there's stuff like that within their little conversation, and even kind of, what Sam is actually doing, or, that they're saying their goodbyes, but then there's also the, I'll be seeing you around type, it goes back and forth, even within that little, maybe 2 minutes of them chatting with each other, less than that. And then, Yeah.
It is, that final quote is very much kind of you want more details? Nah, you can fuck off.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. Yeah.
But it's perfect because, as we've discussed, this movie's real title is Undisclosed Reasons. We don't need the reasons. Yeah. We just need to enjoy the entertainment of everything that's going on.
Yeah. Which it is very entertaining. It is tense, and it keeps you kind of on the edge of your seat. So I'll give it all of that. It's just, and I think watching it just on our own, you can kind of let that stuff go more. I think for the sake of, obviously this podcast, then all the questions become.
I suppose because we're taking notes and we're kind of watching it with a closer eye or whatever. Those questions come to mind more readily. But yeah, like you say, if I was just watching it myself, I'd have some of those questions, but maybe not so many. And you can kind of brush them under the carpet because everything else is so well played. Like, it's a great cast. Everybody plays their role really well. From Robert De Niro to Sean Bean, Stellan Skarsgård, John Reno, Natasha Macalon, Jonathan Pryce. They all play their roles real well. The dialogue is real snappy. The cinematography looks beautiful. The stunts are completely fucking nuts, as we've talked about. Frankenheimer's directions, real tight. It's real good. There's a lot of pluses here. And I think it's an excellent movie, and a movie that probably could have been an all-time classic with a few tweaks here and there with the kind of shaggy dogness of the plot, but I still can't complain too much because I still really like this movie.
I agree.
But that's it. We have got to the end of Ronin. But as always, that is just our thoughts on the movie. Please do give us your thoughts. Contact us. Hit us up on our Twitter at 90s_all. Just leave us a review. Tell us your opinions in a review. And if you can make those reviews 5 stars, that would be grand, because as I may have mentioned on the podcast before, anything less than 5 stars means the algorithm will think we are terrible. So if you have a review that you want to write that is less than 5 stars, please refrain from that and just move on with your day. But that is pretty much all for me. Is there anything you want to say before we head on out, Craig?
No, it was a lot of fun, especially for this Stallone season, and then having obviously the Ronin bonus. It really kind of had a upswing versus the Seagal one where it went downhill.
It started you missed out the best episodes in the Seagal one, and you came mid-season and it was just all downhill. Yeah, there was more peaks and troughs with Stallone. Yes, that is going to be us. Much like season 1, we will now take a 4-week break. It'll go by quick. Don't worry. It's only 4 weeks. And then after the 4 weeks are up, we will return with season 3, when we will be talking about the action films of Kurt Russell. So I hope you all look forward to checking out that. We will return starting with the movie Backdraft, and then we will talk about the rest of Kurt Russell's action filmography in the 90s. So we look forward to seeing you all again then. But until then, see ya.